Books on Books on the Brain. Hello and welcome back to Books on the Brain, a podcast of books and nonsense. I'm Danielle.
I'm Deirdre.
And it is time for us to talk about books, isn't it?
It is. How are you?
You know what? Great question. I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little bit tired. I feel like I've been tired for the past 2 weeks straight, and I just have not been able to catch up on sleep.
Yeah.
But I'm okay. I'm good. I have been reading more than I've been reading in the past 3 months, which is crazy and good and happy for me because my Goodreads goal says that I'm already 11 books behind. And I was like,
okay.
Stop it. I've never been behind in books on a Goodreads goal before.
Yeah.
Which gives me heart palpitations a little bit. So I'm making my way downtown, walking fast. Faces past, I'm homebound.
Okay.
Ba-doo. How are you?
I'm okay. Today's been weird. I'm mustering all the dregs of good energy I can to do this episode, so I'm not like a blob. But yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Oh, my hair's caught. Sorry, I was listening. I was listening. Deirdre got stuck on the subway. What happened?
I don't know. Something happened. There was a delay, and then it.
Sorry that happened too. It probably happens a lot.
It does.
Sorry that happened too. Sorry.
Yeah. It's okay. It's also we walked outside and it was raining and none of us knew it was going to rain tonight, so we were all like, okay.
Oopsie. Oh man. We were talking and we can quickly mention it. We were talking before the podcast started about Daisy Jones and the Six. The first 3 episodes came out today on Prime Video. I have watched them. Deirdre has not yet had time to watch them because she is a working lady.
She's a busy bee.
She's a busy bee, but I like it so far. It's quite literally what I expected. It's verbatim what the book is. So I'm interested to see what the next few episodes hold. And I'm
excited to start it. Now that I know it's not all dropped at once, that feels less intimidating, and maybe I'll make Sunday night my Daisy Jones
and I think
day.
The episodes, and don't actually quote me on this, but I feel like they're only 48 minutes or 45 minutes each.
That feels right for an Amazon show.
Yeah, so they're not like The Last of Us, 100 minutes. You gotta watch. You gotta watch.
I have to say, is the thing going around on TikTok with Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal from The Last of Us?
It is not from The Last
It's
of
not?
Us. I don't know where it's from because Nick Cage is not. If Nick Cage was in The Last of Us, I don't know.
Because I thought it was from The Last of Us, and I was like, oh, this is what's gonna get me to watch it. This little itty bitty clip.
No, but Pedro Pascal does get salt and pepper about halfway through the first episode. It's hot, and that's all I can say.
I was telling my coworkers yesterday I got to see him live. He was in King Lear on Broadway a couple years ago, and I didn't know. No, he was one of the generals or something. It was when Glenda Jackson was King Lear, the female King Lear.
Yeah.
But I was so focused on Glenda Jackson, I didn't know that Pedro Pascal was in the show, and so I went to go see it with a friend of mine. And we had been given tickets through her work.
Yeah.
And the two of us are sitting there, and Pedro walks out onto the stage, and the two of us, at the same time, grab, because we had watched Game of Thrones together.
Of course.
Grab each other and are just tensely holding each other's arms because he's literally 10 feet away from us. And I was like, oh my God.
Passing away.
He's so beautiful.
He is so beautiful.
Can confirm.
And Joel is the character in Last of Us is just this gruff dad. It's just good. He's just good at what he does. But Nick Cage is not in The Last of Us. But if this eases your mind, when I went back to Calgary for my birthday weekend, I watched the first episode with my mother because, and I quote, "I'm not watching that. That's too scary." And I said, Mom, I know it's zombies, but not too scary. I mean, it is scary. I don't want to say it's not scary, but like, you get over it. It's worth it. The writing is good.
Sure.
The pacing is tense. We can move past it. But because it's filmed in Alberta, it's just like littered with like local actors from Calgary that like I've worked with, and I'm like, oh, there's that guy from this and this, or like, oh, there's the downtown skyline, or like, oh, there's the Lethbridge bridge that I drive past every morning to go to school. Like, it's just all these places that I'm like, Pedro Pascal was here. He breathed my air, I suppose. But my mom really liked it. She's gonna continue to watch the series by herself. She was not too scared.
Nice.
I think it's just great. I don't know, like zombies, I feel like you can't go wrong with zombies, even though they are terrifying. They're a good time.
Sure.
What do you mean, sure?
You know what has been getting me through the week?
What?
Is the new cast promos for Shadow and Bone season 2.
Can I be honest with you?
Sure.
I haven't watched anything. I haven't watched the trailer. I haven't watched anything.
Are you saving it? Do you not want me to say anything?
No, it's not even that I'm not saving it. I don't know why I haven't watched it. I don't know why.
Because they've started doing like the fun cast interview things.
Yeah.
And they've separated them into the Grisha and the Crows. And oh my god, I'm like, this is the video that came out today was I don't know what platform they do. It's posted through Netflix Geeked, so I'm not sure if they're just posting everything and then we'll get like each individual platform like Vanity Fair and stuff later.
Yeah.
But it's the one where they do the Google search.
Oh god.
Question reveal. Yeah. And it was like, is Jesper gay? And he was like, well, Jesper's bi, actually. There's this line in the book. And then the guy that plays Wylan like leaned forward. He's like, should we do it? And then it pans in and the two of them do the like 3 lines from the book in I literally was screaming. I was like, this is incredible. Oh, so sweet. It was great.
I feel like I still have such like a hangover from Rule of Wolves that I'm like having a hard time stepping back into the franchise because I feel still devastated.
Fair. That's fair.
I think that's what while you're talking, I was like, oh, but then I also like, I just can't. I can't do it to myself, man.
And I guess somebody said the season 2 is a combination of books 2 and 3.
Oh, so what are the Crows doing?
That's the question. That's the question.
I mean, they're there because they wouldn't be doing promo if they weren't in it.
Correct. Like Wylan was cast.
Yes.
They're in the show.
If I were to guess, and this is just my guess, they're going to start the next season with the ice heist. Or with them getting
season
on the
3, because the ice heist isn't in this season.
Exactly. So I think they'll do all the prep into leaving for the heist. And then the heist and probably Crooked Kingdom will happen in season 3 and season 4.
Maybe. Because I guess it depends on how much of book 3 of Shadow and Bone they do.
Oh, I guess, hey?
Unless they don't mind, like, crossing over the timeline of Six of Crows and the end of book 3.
Well, because regardless, it has to happen, or, like, the Nina character, it's gonna get a little fishy because she's in both of these books.
Right.
And I mean, no, people are new to this franchise. I'm not going to spoil anything. There's a lot of crossover that happens, so I feel like they have to be
it's like
with how they do that. Interesting. What are we doing here today, folks?
So it's time for our book news episode, rounding up things that happened in the month of February, and we have only three topics we want to talk about, but there are 3 juicy topics.
Juicy.
Juicy. So we're going to start off with the lightest of them, because the second one is a little like, and then the third one is like,
yeah. Guess who's doing which one?
But
the
first one is, I know, right? First one's an update. So last month we talked about the HarperCollins union strike, which had still been happening when we recorded that episode. But as of a couple weeks ago, the contract was ratified, which is so exciting. So the HarperCollins union was on strike since November 10th, 2022. And then I thought I would just give you a little, it was around February 21st, February 16th. And they were returning to work on February 21st. And they posted on Twitter and then on Instagram ratifications of this contract, so the things that they were asking for. So they have a new wage structure that guarantees every member of the union can earn at least $50,000 in 2023, and going forward through increases to the minimums for every level and guaranteed paid overtime. They were escalating annual increases to the minimum salary at each level each year of the contract. At entry level, $47,500 in 2023, $48,500 in 2024, and $50,000 in 2025.
Okay,
just a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
A $1,500 ratification bonus was made for every person in the bargaining unit, and guaranteed annual raises for everyone who is satisfactory or better in their performance review. They got a stronger union, an increase of union stewards from 5 stewards to 8 stewards, release time for members to attend monthly union meetings, and union member-led new hire orientation for all new hires to the bargaining unit. Obligated the company to distribute a union welcome letter and union membership card as part of the new hire packet, which is great. They established a joint labor management committee to meet monthly or as needed, so they can regularly advocate for needs to company leadership.
Okay.
They ensured that time spent working on the labor management committee and on all company-sponsored diversity and inclusion activities is treated as work time and is paid accordingly.
Yes, as it should be.
They added Juneteenth and President's Day to the list of paid holidays, increasing the total number of holidays and personal days from 15 to 17. Excuse me. They added 1 paid volunteer day per year to volunteer for a nonprofit or charity of the members' choosing. Established a return to office date of July 1st, 2023, which will allow all members to work fully remotely until then if they want to.
Okay.
And then the last two, I'm just trying to read because all the points were like, some of them were the ratification things. And so the last 2 points are just saying thank you for the support, and they're excited to get back to work.
That's awesome.
Which is great. It seems like a lot of their needs were met, both within wage increases, diversity and inclusion, and just building a stronger union inside of this organization.
Yeah, a lot of their needs were met, which is like kind of slay.
Yeah. Big slay.
Kind of slay.
So very, very excited for them.
Congratulations, HarperCollins Union. You did it.
You did it.
You did the thing.
And proud of them for, striking for so long.
It's scary. It's scary, and it sucks, but sometimes it takes those measures to get important things done.
Indeed. Okay.
Indubitably.
Now, to get into the meat and potatoes.
Meat, potatoes.
So, if you were not familiar, on February 1st, we started the month strong with an article published in GQ, or on the GQ website, GQ UK to be specific, titled, "In the Shallow World of Booktok, being, quote, a reader is more important than actually reading. The TikTok books community is more about a lifestyle aesthetic than actual reading. As a former book, oh no, that is a quote I think that I pulled. Maybe it's not. Anyway, this was also
yeah.
What's the byline and what's the okay, yes, it is the byline. The TikTok books community is more about a lifestyle aesthetic than actual reading. As a former booktuber, I can't help but feel partially responsible.
Okay, first of all, shut your booktuber mouth. Like, for me, like, it's so funny when there's infighting in, like, internet spaces. So, like, well, as a booktuber, I'm like, we're all silly little babies talking about books on the internet. Like, no one is better than each other. Like, please stop.
And, like, even just from the byline,
yeah,
it's like, I created this monster that is Booktok. And it's like, no.
It's like, let me take credit for it, but also poop on it. Isn't that an interesting thing?
In the same breath. The author of this article is Barry Pierce, and I'm not going to read the article verbatim because that seems like a lot, but I did pull some quotes and just thought I would talk through it and break it down. So he starts off by saying he tried to stay away from Booktok for as long as possible, and that circumstances of his winter break over Christmas led to him finally downloading the app. He'd heard about I guess venturing onto Booktok. I don't know if he had even downloaded a TikTok. It was very unclear.
That sounds like he's being held hostage and like download it. Like,
so he literally was like, because he's in Ireland, and he said, I was stranded in the rural Irish tundra for Christmas, and I'd already worked through the latest series of Emily in Paris.
Okay.
So I guess the next best thing to do was to come over to Booktok.
Okay.
And he said, quote, I heard all about how it allegedly changed the books industry forever and made some authors millionaires practically overnight.
Yeah, but not allegedly.
That's not allegedly. That has happened.
It's not alleged.
I can tell you exactly circumstances where that has happened. That is factual.
That's so strange.
So, I feel like if this article came out in like 2021, I could see that phrasing, but it's 2023, baby. Like, there have been so many indie authors brought to traditional publishing houses. Alex Astor got not only a book deal but a movie deal, and went to Comic-Con and spoke on a book panel. Barnes & Noble is still open.
Barnes & Noble is still open. Slay.
And then of course we dive into the go-to for every Booktok article. Quote, there was just something about watching the same 20 books being flaunted again and again. People openly confessing to owning hundreds of unread books, the flagrant abuse of sticky tabs in novels that absolutely do not require that much citation. Bookshelves that are so perfect that arouse suspicion. People calling themselves certified bookworms, in quotes, but like entirely earnestly. Frequent references
from the guy who said that I created, like, I started, it's my fault, Booktok happened. Like, okay, if we're keep going, sorry, I'm just mad.
Frequent references to people's, quote, yearly reading goals. Why is that in quotes? People
That's
have
a good
those.
question. That's quite literally what people do online. Okay.
Something called New Adult, ? Which I'm like,
babe, it's in publishing.
It was like entering a parallel universe where reading wasn't just something that someone did for fun. It was a lifestyle and aesthetic.
And what if it, like, and so what?
And so what? And so what?
And who cares? He does, obviously.
And I think the thing that, like, needs to be acknowledged is at the end of the day, this is a social media site. So yes, everything is going to have a level to it. Like, there are some creators that are going to be organic and share the highs and the lows and everything. There are other creators that are going to create beautiful landscapes with their pages, but at the end of the day, it is a social site where people film, edit, and upload content. Point blank, period.
It's so silly to me because it's like they're like the aesthetics of reading have far predated the internet. Like people reading, like why do people go to coffee shops and read little books? Because of, well, I mean, probably for other reasons, but like I go for the aesthetic and also because I like coffee shops.
Right. And like sometimes I want to set the mood in my like apartment. I want to light a candle. I want to pick a nice playlist to have on. I want to have a little snack and a beverage. Like, but that's also the same thing I would do if I was going to put on a movie.
Yes. And it's
so
like,
why is the intention different because I'm choosing to pick up a book and read as my form of entertainment instead of going to Netflix?
I'll tell you why. It's because it's a primarily female thing, especially on Booktok. It's primarily a female thing, especially like the aesthetic videos are mostly women, and a subgenre of that, women in their 20s, like 16 to 20, whatever.
Because hello, this app was for children. And when I say children, I mean people in their early 20s and teens. So hello. But we're going to circle back to that female dominated space later, but it was a good foreshadowing there.
Thanks.
Then he goes on to talk about the community of BookTube and how a lot of things that happened on BookTube, like book hauls, unhauls, challenges, and wrap-ups, have made their way over to Booktok.
But also Bookstagram and BookTwitter.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry.
And he talks about how for a while BookTube felt like a cozy corner of the internet, but then it didn't feel like that anymore, and that's why he chose to leave and went into a career of writing about books. But he also talks about how his BookTube channel led to the legitimacy of him being able to talk about books and get his job that he has now, which, newsflash, there are book talkers that have done the same thing.
There's so many book talkers who work in publishing now.
That work in publishing, that work for PR agencies, that are PR people for indie authors, like that are content creators for authors. There are plenty of people that have leveraged their legitimacy as creators to create careers. So again, it just from the jump really is giving. I scrolled on Booktok for 2 days and wrote an article on that 2-day experience.
And like I would like to and I know this was posted on the 1st of February. But like for this article to come out saying like there's only 20 books that I read during Black History Month is kind of like a not good vibe. Like that's like a self-report, babe. It's a bit of a self-report in my opinion.
Yeah, and again, this is something I will go back to.
Sorry.
In 2 seconds.
Tell me to
give me 2 seconds.
Sorry.
So then in the middle of the article, Pierce brings up an article that was published on Bustle by Stephanie Dandler, who is the author of who's the author of Sweet Bitter and Stray. And Dandler talks about getting onto Instagram in 2015 and trying to figure out how to like carve a space for herself. When around the same time Sweet Bitter was coming out and it was actually gaining a lot of traction in posts across Bookstagram, but she hadn't really leveraged that content herself on her own page. She was trying to figure out if she wanted to be like an author presence or if she wanted to just be herself and talk about her other hobbies. And she said, quote, "I had nothing to do with the early fans of the book posting about it. It was organic, spontaneous, and frankly surprising. But when those readers eventually made their way to my page, it wasn't to talk about Sweet Bitter. They came to see the book recommendations."
Well, yes.
Yeah. I want book recommendations from my favorite authors.
Like that's the whole thing about social media, is getting a glimpse into the people you admire's lives. And for a
Right.
lot of
And I mean 2015 was a different
yes, true. That's
time
true.
on social media. So fast forward to the pandemic, there's a rise in Booktok, and she notices that there's especially publishers noticing the impacts that it can have on book sales, and authors felt a pressure to join TikTok, which, you know, we have talked about with authors that have been on the podcast. We talked about it with Nisha. We talked about it with Victoria Aveyard.
Yep.
I think we talked about it with Katie Robert a little bit.
We talked about it with Talia too.
Oh yes. Yeah, we did talk about it with Talia. And how they do feel this pressure from the publisher and from the industry at large, like the fans that they have, to be present on all these platforms. But it wasn't actually her like publishing people or agents that eventually got her to download TikTok. She is friends with Emily Ratajkowski, who is at Emrata. And she is the one that actually got her to download TikTok.
That's so funny.
Which is funny to me. I'm like, oh, Emrata's your friend?
Cool, very casual.
And then she does a really interesting thing, which I haven't seen in any other like Booktok response article, where she dives into the For You page. Excuse me. So she says, quote, "I like that TikTok is messier than its still life cousin Instagram, but I kept wondering, where are the books? Every time I went on TikTok looking for books, it seemed impossible to discover different fiction. It was the same 20 books over and over, reinforcing the idea that if you aren't reading that Colleen Hoover book, no shade, haven't read, you're not in the club. Where are the accounts talking about dead authors, backlist authors, books recently reissued, books from indie publishers like Catapult, Milkweed, Soft Skull, and Wave? Where's the page that functions like the lit in translation table at McNally Jackson bookstore in New York, where I found Yuko Tsushima, Hilda Hiltz, and Sharanoush. Sharanoush Parsiper. I asked on both TikTok and Instagram for leads to these accounts, and the response I got was that they frustratingly didn't seem to exist. After a month of my own posts and engagement, more, quote, literary content was fed to me. Apparently, I was looking for the, quote, lit girl aesthetic, which made me briefly want to die. There was the Otessa Moshfegh, The Secret History, and a surprising amount of Dostoevsky in the hands of startlingly beautiful women with cutting captions about angst and reading in the corner. But my inability to get hooked on Booktok actually has more to do with the way the app works. That it's not a social media app, but an entertainment app. On it, you can't just show a book by Clarice Lispector. The successful accounts performed being a woman who reads Clarice Lispector. And I was also performing something as an author who was over Booktok and has more rarefied consumer tastes than your average reader, a role I was probably born to play, though I'm not necessarily proud of that. And so that was a big chunk to dive into, but I really appreciated that she kind of broke down, like, at the start, I had to find Booktok, which we all have gone through as like, it's very rare that you'll find a Booktok creator who was like, I downloaded TikTok and on day one I found Booktok, and then the next day I decided I was going to become a Booktok creator.
No,
maybe that's how it goes now, but almost we're headed into the 3-year anniversary of this hashtag being around, and this community. Like, way back when in 2020, I was on TikTok for love that my light's done.
That's okay.
You know, it took me about a month and a half to find my first book video. When I joined TikTok. But then she talks about how, you know, she had to do her own like posts and engagement and really cultivate an understanding with the algorithm of what she was looking for. And because this is a social media app, because it is an entertainment-based app, she didn't know the language of what to search because it's not an SEO-based app. And like we said a couple minutes ago, it's an app designed for a younger audience.
Yeah.
So a younger audience is going to be using words like lit girl aesthetic.
Yeah.
You know?
That's so sweet.
Like,
I loved it.
I love that. And then her final notes in the article say, I'm left with the suspicion that writing and reading are the most mysterious and private tricks our fretful little brains can perform. It's a performance not meant for the public gaze. I do not see a home for myself as a book talker. I'm afraid that I don't know how to both genuinely read and imitate myself reading, which is fair. Like, not every reader is meant to be a book talk creator, and not every person is meant to be a content creator. Like, Booktok is still content creation.
Yeah.
And when I read this, it immediately made me think of our conversation with Victoria Schwab and how, like, this will stick with me for the rest of my life. She was like, the community of Booktok took the quiet act of reading and made it public.
Yeah. It's true.
And you know, there are some people that might not jive with that and they might think it's weird and they might want to keep it private. But there are a lot of people, as we can see by all of our followers and the people that we each engage with, that there are people that needed this community and thrive in this community. Like, my life would be so different if I hadn't found this community.
Yep. It's so interesting. And I really like what she goes on to say about like having to perform, like the performative aspect of Booktok. And I don't mean performative in like in the way that it's usually meant, but like it is a performance. It is a performance of you sharing your joy or sharing your right, like, but I also think in the age of where like people are live streaming, oh my gosh, my speech impediment, people are live streaming 24 hours a day, showing their lives. How is that any different? Like, pretending or like setting up your camera and filming yourself reading, if that brings you joy, I just don't, it's the same thing of like people hating on what teenage girls like I just don't get it. Like, it just seems so gross and icky and like not for good reasons.
Right. And I think at the end of the day, like, not everything is for every person. Like, you might not be a reader who engages with Booktok or engages with Bookstagram or engages with Book Twitter or BookTube, like, and that's okay. You might get more fulfillment out of a book club or one person in your life that you share book recommendations with and talk about books with and how they made you feel and all that kind of stuff.
Mayhaps.
You know? But there is, like, I think a lot of us have found an incredible connection. Which, if you joined Booktok during the pandemic, and you were on Booktok like summer 2020, I think we have a very different thought process and connection to this community because, like, I've said it before, like, there were some days where the only reason I left my bed was to film a Booktok video.
Absolutely.
And having that human connection, even though it was through a screen, and yes, I can understand that I built parasocial relationships and I have broken that down with my therapist, like,
but you've also created real relationships like from it too.
Like, exactly. Like, I know I'm not the only person that got to meet a lot. I've met so many people in person, not Danielle yet because we live too far away from each other.
One day.
One day. But, you know, I got to meet Jason and Kevin and Jenna and Zoran. I've met Liz and Giselle, like, so many people that I admire and really feel like I connect with through a screen, and we do end up connecting in real life too.
It's it's interesting. You said something that sparked a thought for me. You said it's not for everybody. This isn't something that's for everybody. And I think that's so true, but I think it really boils down to, if you look at the people who are always in opposition to these things, it's I feel like, and this is a broad stroke, a big paintbrush here, it's a lot of people who I think have been afforded a lot of entitlement in their life and believe everything is for them, be it that is men, white people, the intersection of both, who knows. It's very interesting to hear, like, people get like, well, this is, I don't understand this, or like, what is this aesthetic? It's like, it's not for you, but you think you are afforded so much in life and everything should be for you. And it's like, but it's just not for you.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's very interesting. You know, something to be curious about. Something to be curious
about.
Let's
be curious. Hang on, I'm gonna try and fix my lighting. This feels embarrassing.
That's okay.
So back to Barry. We're gonna finish up his article.
Yeah.
He then goes on after he broke down his own thoughts on this article, on Dandler's article. I thought I forgot her name. And he uses her thoughts on the performative aspect.
Yeah.
To then go on to say, there's an uncanny falseness behind it all, a showy nothingness that only approximates bibliophilia. Why? Who doesn't want to be seen as literary? Being perceived as having read a lot of books warrants a fair share of cultural capital. If you fake it, then why not? Or if you can fake it, then why not? And I think that for me is the part where I'm like, I think you did such a disservice to this article by only quoting other articles that you agree with and not actively reaching out to other creators. Yeah, I mean, this whole article reeks of confirmation bias.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I said it in my video that I made about this article. For an article that calls Booktok shallow, this entire article feels so shallow.
Yeah.
Like, I know I didn't like the New York Times article. There have been plenty of other articles published that I did not like about what they had to say on Booktok, and I could pick those apart, but this one just felt so like I didn't like it. I think it's fake. I think you're all phonies. And like I said before, I think a lot of us have this very like protectiveness about it because it feels like you don't want to understand.
Yeah, yes.
Us.
It's like a judging from the outside, like I'm not even going to try to understand. And it's interesting. So you're just saying things that are making my brain tickle. But it's interesting to me that he talks about like being perceived as having read a lot of books warrants a fair share of cultural capital. From whose perspective, babe? And which books are you talking about? It's steeped in white supremacy. And it's so interesting when people start to decenter that stigma and start reading romance books or books written by women or books for the aesthetic that people get all uncontrolled crazy because it's disrupting a system of power that's in place of control. It's interesting. Continue.
It is interesting. It is interesting.
Continue.
So then, to round out the article, he talks about another piece that was published in The Guardian by Rhiannon Lucy Cosslett titled Reading is Precious, which is why I've been giving away my books. And in this article, she says that the cult, or what I would say cultishness of book ownership, people quote unquote hoarding hundreds of books without thoughtfully thinking about their purpose in their homes, and the backlash people receive for being more frugal about their book ownership. It was a very interesting article to read because it was somebody who was just like, I don't need all these things.
It's giving Marie Kondo.
Exactly. It's
giving Marie Kondo.
It's giving Western lens.
So
it's giving minimalism.
Which is fine.
But again, there is this thing of minimalism that is steeped in
privilege, of entitlement. Like, people who can afford to curate their lives in such a highly and concentrated way do have privilege, because when minimalism is for people who have low socioeconomic statuses, that's poverty, babe. Like, it's very different. It's very, very different, the framing of those two things. You're getting social justice, Danielle, tonight. What's going on?
I know. And
now my keywords.
Like, I did understand the like point of her article, because it really was talking about how there are a lot of people online get super offended when you don't want to create large book collections, or why would you give away book collections, which, you know, there is a spectrum. There's a spectrum with everything. There are people that are going to have opinions about everything. And if you want to be the person that buys a book and gives it away to then buy your next book, and you don't have a lot in your home, like, that's up to you, right?
No one's forcing you to have a library,
we can absolutely have a conversation about the judgment of what people do in their own homes and what social media has done for that. But that's not what she was talking about.
That's a very different conversation, because I think there is some validity to that, right? Like, the videos that people showing that they film in front of bookshelves versus not, or when they have these huge book hauls with hundreds of books, how those videos perform better than library halls. I think that there is absolutely some validity to that conversation, but that's absolutely not
the conversation she was having. And so, you know, he briefly mentions her article, and then her article doesn't even mention Booktok at all. It doesn't come up once. Sorry, there's a fire truck going by.
I can't hear it.
Oh, great. So he wraps up his piece saying, quote, "To prove Costlet's point," like, why do you need to do that? Have a look at the TikTok in which someone has wrapped every unread book they own, over 300, in brown paper. Or the dude who says that one of his tips for learning to read more is to, quote, romanticize reading by finding a cute outfit to read in. Don't. Or the person who has made miniature versions of every book they read in 2022 and displays them in a frame. Or the person who has re-tabbed their books because the tabs stick out too much and they want the color match the tabs to the book covers.
I think that's
with all this effort being put into being seen as a reader, one wonders how any of them have the time to read. And again, it's like opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. And you are allowed to have your opinion. You are not allowed to dictate how people choose to live their lives on or offline.
Yeah. Like, it doesn't hurt you. Like, it just doesn't hurt you if people are romanticizing their reading. And also, like, people who have, like, dads. Have you seen dads? Have you seen a dad before, Deirdre? Have you seen dads who have garages that are just full of, like, sports memorabilia? And, like, that's a man cave. That's not hoarding.
I grew up with a dad. I love my dad. He would buy, like, action figures of his favorite things. My dad has collector's speed racer pieces that are still in the boxes. Like, my dad was like a comic book collector for a really long time. Like, that's the kind of person I grew up with.
Yeah.
You know? But, like, nobody shits on comic book collectors.
Nope. It's interesting.
Maybe they do, and I just haven't come across them yet. But I don't think they do.
Well, Deirdre, I would be inclined to think it doesn't get the same amount of hate because it is much more a male-dominated space than a female-dominated space. Just saying.
Ding, ding, ding. So to continue this past what Barry put out onto the internet, I did a little
funny name, Barry.
I did a little peruse on the old Google, and Danielle has introduced me to the world of Reddit.
Don't blame me.
Don't bring me into this podcast.
Don't bring me into this.
Listen. I never ventured onto Reddit until we made this podcast. And she's made me feel less afraid to scour it when it comes to our episodes. So of course there was a thread about this article. And many of them were agreeing or boiling his points down to their simplest base parts. So user councilman Rick Prime wrote, the aesthetic part isn't new. People have bought, quote, tasteful books to sit on bookshelves for ages, not to read, but to look well-read to visitors. Yeah,
like,
and that's... Do you remember, like, I had to have been within the first few months of us being creators.
We're talking about the same thing.
We were talking about the same thing because people were listing color coordinated book stacks on Etsy.
Literally what I was going to say. I was like, do you remember people were buying empty books or books in the store that were the same color to curate their shelves?
That somebody on Etsy had curated into a stack, and you could buy a stack for like $30 to display somewhere in your house.
No, sorry, keep going.
Nope, I'm done.
There was a celebrity who, I don't know who was, but she, in an article, talked about how she had these empty bookcases and they were coming in to photograph her house for some magazine. So she just had some... Do you know what I'm talking about? Just had someone go out and buy...
I do, but I can't remember which person it was.
And I was
yes, I remember.
That's the problem. I'm not the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
No, we are not the problem. User Beldran1224 wrote, yep, the article made me want to laugh, TBH, because, well, the author seems absolutely convinced of their role in this, quote, new phenomena that isn't new at all. Coffee book tables are an entire area of publishing meant to exclusively be books to convince guests of your intellectual learnings and not have much worth reading in them. I also think many of the characterizations in this article are just wrong and frankly mean-spirited. I think it's problematic to decide these people aren't real readers. The article says they aren't genuine a couple times. Also, complaining about the same 20 books, quote unquote, flaunted is not a sign of them not being read. I'm a library. There are a small handful of books every year that have tons of holds and people are reading them. The old folks are reading their Pattersons and Ivanovich. The kids are reading Dogman, and right now, they're reading Colleen Hoover. And another layer is that TikTok has to be curated. If you only see BookTokers you don't think are genuine, that's partly your own fault. There are a lot of valuable BookTokers out there, and you can find them. I, for one, have found it an invaluable resource to discovering new books by BIPOC authors. And I'm pleasantly surprised by the advocacy for small bookstores, support for the HarperCollins strike, etc. Hello! And then I have two more. User Majuk, I don't know, said, yeah, it's weird that it's specifically referring to TikTok and praising YouTube as if it wasn't the exact same culture. It just seems like a, quote, TikTok bad because it's new and used by younger people, unquote. But that could also be projection. But yes, people pretending to be active readers / scholars just for an aesthetic to fit in isn't a new phenomenon. It's probably been a thing ever since academic scriptures have been public. Yeah. And then the last one, user Zoe Dim said, I can relate. I have always wanted to be one of those people that exercises a lot, preferably without having to exercise.
Ew.
And that made me laugh. Like, yeah, that's basically what he's saying, is like, you're saying that these people want to be readers, but they don't want to read.
Womp womp.
Womp womp. So to wrap this up, one of our fellow book talkers, Cameron, who is at Chamber of Secret Books, actually published a In Defense of Booktok on Fable, which is a platform where everybody is hosting book clubs. It seems like, I feel like a new one pops up every month. And I am 99% sure it's Cameron from Chamber of Secrets Books that published this article, because the Fable website is so annoying and wouldn't link like from her Booktok to this from her book club to this article, or like share any sort of anything. And even the app wasn't showing like the online blog posts. So regardless, I'm pretty sure it's Cameron. She wrote it was an opinion piece, and it was titled "The Renaissance of Reading: A Defense of Booktok." And in it, Cameron breaks down quotes from Pierce's article and gives her own opinion as someone who has been a successful Booktok creator for 2+ years. She talks about how most Booktok articles, I don't know what word I thought I wrote. Thought? She talks about how most Booktok articles tout. I was like, I don't know what word I thought I was writing down. Most Booktok articles tout the quote, "I only see the same 20 books." And what that actually correlates to is when you think about the algorithm. She talks about how Booktok is almost, and probably will be considered, when we look at this era of reading in like 50 to 100 years, a quote unquote new era. Again, I think I was a little cuckoo bananas when I put those two thoughts together. So yeah, she talks about how a lot of these articles talk about seeing the same 20 books. And then she goes on to say that we're in this like new renaissance of reading because of Booktok. She says, quote, "Everything changed after Booktok. How can we condense all of Booktok to shallowness when it's gotten people out of years-long reading slumps? How can we not praise books that get people excited to read again? The Booktok community has demolished that stereotype of romance being a lesser genre, and readers are now unabashed about their choice of books. Barnes & Noble's quiet and dusty aisles are now buzzing with the hushed, excited whispers of people who've heard about this book via Booktok." And what I will say to that is this article was published on UK GQ, and Barry says he does live in Ireland, so obviously he's not aware of the demise that Barnes & Noble was facing. But that's also not a hard thing to look up if you're a journalist. Or, you know, maybe target your article and say this is specific to the UK or European side. Your mic is off.
Embarrassing. He's a journalist who writes about books. He should probably just know.
Yeah, because I think that is like the biggest thing about Booktok is an international community.
100%.
Like I literally, when I scroll on my following page and end up in like 5 different countries within a minute.
Absolutely.
I'll always leave a bookstore smiling when I see a group of teens sitting on the floor showing their hauls to each other in the privacy of the YA section. How can we feel nothing but awe for this online community that has reinvented the popularity of reading? According to Words Rated, in 2022, over 788.7 million. I'm going to say that again. 788.7 million copies of printed books were sold in the United States. This figure was the second highest sales mark for printed books in the 21st century, trailing only a record-setting 2021 with 843 million copies sold.
Which was the height of the pandemic, which makes sense.
Right. And again, I will say, like, those are US-based numbers. Barry is not from the US. However, I do think it's important to point out that, like, those numbers would not be what they are without Booktok.
Absolutely.
Period. Like, there were amazing books coming out in 2021 and 2022, but those books would not have gotten the reach that they did without Booktok. Cameron goes on to explore parts of the article that I saw a lot of people, myself included, discussing in their videos when they were reacting to the article. And it's the fact that Pierce and many of the other articles published about Booktok spend the majority of their articles completely tearing down a section of the internet that has been built by women and queer people, where they can celebrate something they love unapologetically. So we're coming back around. to your point. And Cameron does a really beautiful, I would highly recommend. It'll obviously be linked in the notes and description on YouTube. I highly recommend giving Cameron's article a read, because I do think she really beautifully put her thoughts together on snippets from Barry's article. And this is something she brings up multiple times, is that Booktok is a space created by women that is mainly female dominated. Of course, there are men there. Of course, there is a queer community there that has men in it. But at the end of the day, we cannot limit the knowledge that the majority of people that are seen on Booktok, especially when you initially start scrolling, are women or young girls. She concludes by saying, listen, Booktok isn't perfect. Like every online community, there can be negativity. Booktok can promote unrealistic reading goals, and on the surface, I can see why this author believes we only talk about the same 20 books. But with a little research and deeper exploration, it wouldn't have taken long to see an authentic group of readers trying to find a space to talk about the books they love. And yes, we're going to look cute while doing it.
Yeah, duh.
Hello. We live on a floating rock.
We do.
That's dying.
We literally do.
Like, I'm going to do whatever I want to make me happy in my spare time.
And I feel like it's so interesting to see different parts of the world and how they consider Booktok or consider how to utilize Booktok.
Yeah.
Because like Booktok gets so much negative smoke from the US and from not often the UK, I feel. And like Canada loves Booktok. Loves it.
I know.
So many articles about how great it is and how publishers and indie publishers can utilize it, which feels so polar opposite to what is coming out of the US.
Right.
Which is so crazy. Crazy.
So yeah, that's everything I brought. I think we discussed a lot throughout, but I know I get very defensive of Booktok when people start attacking it. But I also get really defensive when people inside our community are being poo-poo heads. Like today, there was a video from somebody that decided they were going to tell everybody how they should make their videos. Like, you have to use the inverted filter. Audiobooks do not count towards your reading goal. What else? They said something else. Oh, they said you're not reading 30 books a month. Stop lying.
But what if you are, babe? What if you are?
Like, I haven't recently because I've been a busy bee. Yeah. But you remember there was one July where I read almost a book every day because I had the time.
It happens. It doesn't like people need to just say that they're jealous and move on.
Right. And you can be jealous. That's totally fine. Or think about how you utilize your day. Like, there are some people who every spare moment that they have is filled with reading. I know for me, I spend a lot of my time listening to audiobooks because they do count towards my reading goal.
Yeah.
Because I need my headspace filled with something as I do the mundane things around my apartment, like picking up after myself, doing my laundry, doing my dishes, washing my face in the morning, like all of those spare moments, because I'm living in a situation where I'm by myself during those moments. I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have pets that I'm taking care of. I don't have children. And then on top of that, I balance how I'm consuming entertainment. Some days I watch TV, some days I read a book.
Yeah, like people, it's any of those broad strokes where people are like, this is how we should do this, or people are doing this or not. I'm like, they're purposefully alienating and like making fire where there shouldn't be fire to get views. Like, it's just. At this point, I just ignore it because I'm like, this is just such a.
Oh, it was an immediate block. I was like, absolutely
it's just a play for views, and it's like I can't appreciate the hustle. I can't. Not that.
No, especially not when the hustle is completely based on ableism.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's other ways. If you're looking to just get views on Booktok, there are ways to do it.
Because let me tell you how this could have been reframed if we just took the snippet about the inverted books.
Yeah.
If you want people to make more videos that are inverted so that the book title is the right way around, do not tell people they have to use the inverted filter on TikTok, because it is extremely difficult to use that filter. It is not easy to film backwards. And there are many, many people with many disabilities that are creators on Booktok and cannot use that filter for whatever reason.
Yeah.
However, another option for people is to tell them to film in their phone camera, which automatically inverts it after it films, and then you upload that to TikTok, and the video is already inverted for you.
There's other
like
there's
could
other
have been a tutorial.
Could have been a here's some information in case you didn't know, but instead it was
of
let me make you feel
are
bad.
a bad creator for doing this, and this is how you must do it.
And like, here's the thing: the worst thing people do is they comment on your videos saying, "What is the title of that book?" And then you get engagement because someone commented.
Ding,
so
ding, ding.
It doesn't matter. People are crazy.
Yeah. So, like, I will defend Booktok inside, outside our community. I'm here, like, but I think I would like to see some form of journalism that feels like actual journalism come out about Booktok.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I think
the best article that has been done so far was actually the Rolling Stone article. That Kevin Martinez and Carmen were interviewed for. It was a very thoughtful article with some very interesting interview questions.
And I think too, like, it depends on who's paying or who's publishing these articles too, right? Like, I literally months ago was interviewed for a publication in Canada that just came out like 2 weeks ago, but it was for eBound, which is a part of the nonprofit that talks about indie publishers within Canada. So they interviewed 4 booktokers who are Canadian, but because it was like an institution where they do a lot of like education, there was a lot more thought put into it than just what is going to get clicks, what is clickbaiting. Because at the end of the day, these articles are trying to clickbait just as much as YouTube thumbnails are.
Yeah.
Just as much, man.
Yeah. So those are all my thoughts. I'm like, ugh, God.
Ready to get more mad?
I guess.
That was a really bad transition because you were about to say something. What were you going to say?
I wasn't going to say anything.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Okay. Let's go.
So this is called In Defence of JK Rowling, Hogwarts Legacy, and the Witch Trials of JK Rowling. And you may be thinking to yourself, what? And I'll say, hold on. And I quote, this is me quoting myself when I wrote this. Okay, there's a lot here. So, me quoting when I wrote this. So on February 16th, just mere weeks ago, the New York Times published an opinion piece written by Pamela Paul in support of JK Rowling. This article, it's wild. It's like, I have a lot of feelings about
I'm glad you read it because I didn't.
I was mad. I've honestly ended up pulling quite a bit of it because I was like, but I'll skim. I promise it's not all of it. I promise. So there's some things that I want to mention before we get into this opinion piece of In Defense of JK Rowling, which like does that.
Sure.
We're in defense. She has a moat in her house. Anyway, so there was some kind of like intersections happening when this article went live. So first being that 2 open letters were published calling and criticizing the New York Times for their coverage of transgender the transgender community. One was signed by over 370 New York Times contributors, which is crazy. And the other one was by a lot of like social justice companies, GLAAD, Human Rights Campaign, Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund. So
I think I signed it.
Slay!
Because I was a subscriber to the New York Times. I remember seeing it, and I can't remember if I clicked on it in time, but I'm pretty sure I signed it.
I think because it's interesting, right? Because these two articles went live before this article was published, and they still thought, they were like, okay, what's up? So this is what a little snippet of from the New York Times contributor letter. They say the Times has, in recent years, treated gender diversity with an eerily familiar mix of pseudoscience and euphemistic charged language, while publishing reporting on trans children that omits relevant information about its sources. And so then the New York Times was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then they said this. As a news organization, we pursue independent reporting on transgender issues that include profiling groundbreakers in the movement, challenges, and prejudice faced by the community, and how society is grappling with debates about care. Boop. Our journalism strives to explore, interrogate, and reflect the experiences and ideas and debates in society to help readers understand them. Our reporting did exactly that, and we're proud of it. The New York Times. Okay. And so then a person who wrote for the other open letter by the social justice companies says this: there's a coordinated and intentional disinformation campaign targeting trans people, especially trans youth right now. It's critical that people seek out credible resources and experts. The New York Times is being very selective in who they're allowing to publish articles on trans issues.
Correct.
It's a little fishy. So then specifically something I just want to like sprinkle in really quick was what this man, or this person rather, Alex Schmitter, talks about as like ways that they would suggest talking about trans issues. So the need for transgender joy amid trauma. So we're talking about like, let's celebrate the happiness as well as talking about the hard stories. Gender affirming care saves lives, and how there's often a rhetoric that it does not, but there are statistics that are overwhelmingly showing that they do, and listening to trans people, which feels a little obvious. So the article that was written, the letter that was written by the social justice companies did make some demands. Can I help you?
She wants to get in the middle of it. She's like, I have thoughts and opinions.
Are you mad? Okay. So this is what they said. They were like, okay, we want you to hire at least, hold on. They want to hire at least 2 trans people on the opinion side and at least 2 trans people on the news side within 3 months of this letter being published. And to immediately stop platforming anti-trans activists in questioning best practice medical care. And then the other letter didn't really make the same demands. They were just like, we want you. Okay, they're fighting. The girls are fighting. Stop. Sorry. It's like the witching hour here at 8:40 p.m. It's 9:48. I just lied about the time. Okay, so these letters happen. Also, what happens, and it's addressed quite liberally in the article, is this podcast, which, yes, when I read the title of this segment and you thought to yourself, what's that third thing? That is the name of the podcast, The Witch Trials of JK Rowling. Isn't that crazy? That's the title of the podcast.
That JK Rowling is hosting.
She's being interviewed on it. It's a 9-part podcast that she's being interviewed on, but she's the only person who's being interviewed on. So it's the host, and then her.
Got it.
So here's this thing. So this podcast basically is talking about JK Rowling's story and then all the criticism she's faced. She says she indicates she'll discuss the reaction to those anti-trans comments in addition to discussing her journey as an author with host Megan Phelps Roper, a high-profile former member of the anti-LGBTQ Westboro Baptist Church. Obviously she's no longer so part of, maybe not obviously, this woman is no longer part of Westboro Baptist Church, but you go do your own research on that, because I gotta take care of me. And it came out on Valentine's Day, the first 2 episodes, which was like, oh, come on, not on Valentine's Day.
Rude.
So then Vulture, I love Vulture. We don't talk enough about how great Vulture is.
Vulture does some good articles.
I do like.
I use them a lot for our book reports.
Me too. I feel like they're a little. I feel like I always know where they stand on things, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
So this is a little excerpt from their, basically essay review of the first 2 episodes of the podcast. The Witch Trials by JK Rowling displays little urgency in engaging with the perspectives of trans people or even contemplating the authority of Rowling's narrative at all. Rich territory given the fact that the author has wielded disproportionately legal pressure against the speech of some critics. Worse still is how it's not hard at all to get a whiff of a certain kind of both sides evocation. With the reoccurring motif of witch trials, Phelps Roper, the woman, constructs a framework that equates the book burning amongst Christian fundamentalists of Harry Potter with the fact that some former fans are angry about J.K. Rowling's transgender views, treating them both as illegitimate responses of the same nature. No, they're not. No, they're not.
I just process that for a second because
like, here's the thing, and I'm not burning of books and the critique of Harry Potter of being like witchcraft and being satanic. She isn't the vibe, but it's also not the same as what is being done by J.K. Rowling's anti-trans comments that are being made. Like, they are both big issues, but you cannot equate them.
The reasons why Harry Potter has been on book banning lists is because people take religion to a new freaking level.
Yeah.
The reason why people want J.K. Rowling to what's the word? Starts with A.
Apologize?
Nope. I mean, sure. Be accountable.
Gotcha.
And be held accountable for the harmful representation that is in her books between the racism, the anti-Semitism, the homophobia.
Yeah.
Like, all of those things are ingrained in her books, and asking for accountability and an apology is so much different than banning a book for witchcraft.
I agree, and I think equating them does neither justice, because they're both wrong, but for different reasons. So this is now the article. So basically, article starts with Paula. No, you know what? I'll reserve my judgment on Paula. I'm sure she's fine.
No one needs to defend JK Rowling.
That's my thing. That's my thing.
We didn't need this article. That's why I'm mad. Like, this woman has everything.
And that's my thing. And I'm like, and because it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating to hear this rhetoric and be someone who is a feminist and be like, I can see, but you are also so badly contradicting feminism. Like, it's just so mind-boggling that people can be so obtuse.
Yeah.
So she starts this article by, people are mad and they're sending threats to JK Rowling, which isn't cool. Don't send people threats.
Yeah. But welcome to the internet.
Yeah, welcome to the internet when you are a hateful person or just a public figure. And so this is now some excerpts of the article. The answer is straightforward. So she basically asks, like, why is J.K. Rowling getting so much heat? Because she's asserted the right to spaces for biological women only, such as domestic abuse shelters and sex-segregated prisons. Because she has insisted that when it comes to determining a person's legal gender status, self-declared gender identity isn't sufficient, or is insufficient. Because she's expressed skepticism about phrases like people who menstruate in reference to biological women, because she has defended herself and far more important, supported others, including detransitioners and feminist scholars who have come under attack from trans activists. And because she followed on Twitter and praised some of the works of Magdalene Burns, a lesbian feminist who has made incendiary comments about transgender people. That, I was like, to hear someone try to paint all those things as like positives, I was like, that is the fuel that people are often like, this is the best. It's just like, you really are not reading the room. They're like, they're for biological women only. I'm like, that's the problem. That's a problem.
That is the problem. That is the root of this problem.
That is the problem, babe.
Like, what?
It's strange. So the article goes on to say, you might disagree, probably strongly. At least they know. With Rowling's views
cue back our rage screams.
Yeah. You may believe that the prevalence of violence against transgender people means that airing any views contrary to those of vocal trans activists will aggravate animosity towards a vulnerable population. So what she's saying there is like, people are saying that if you don't openly only support trans people, it's a disservice to them, which isn't true. You can like, that's not what anyone's saying, but whatever. But nothing Rowling has said qualifies as transphobic. This is the part. This is part of the part. This is part of the part. She is not disputing.
Are you trans, Paula?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know, but I do not.
I meant that as a rhetorical question because you can't actually ask people if they're
trans.
Like, but
I should have. I don't know.
No.
She's not disputing the existence of gender dysphoria. She's never voiced opposition to allowing people to transition under evidence-based therapeutic and medical care. She is not denying transgender people equal pay or housing. There is no evidence that she is putting trans people in danger, as has been claimed, nor is she denying their right to exist.
She literally has done all of those things.
And that's the thing. Like, that's the kicker
all
here.
Of them.
I don't understand. And so then Paula goes on, I've read all their books, read all of JK Rowling's books. I've read all the tweets. I've found nothing transphobic in them. And she even says, I even read the Robert Galbraith books, and I found nothing transphobic in them. And I said, babe, there was
the books published under the pen name of the person who
like
made electroshock therapy.
Gay conversion, yep. Boo.
What?
I'm getting like, my breath's getting high, my face is getting red, I'm getting angry. So she goes on to say, for years, books in the Harry Potter series were amongst the most banned in America. We know, Paula. Most Christians denounced the book's positive depiction of witchcraft and magic, some calling Rowling a heretic. And then it talks about Megan Phillips again.
Sorry, I just want to pause. I didn't think the word heretic was actually used since like the 1800s.
The last time I think I've actually seen someone use heretic was in the Grishaverse. And they're talking about that guy. The last time I've seen it. I know.
Like, I know we're going like a little off to the side for a second, but like, my God, these U.S. Christians. God help you.
God help you. God help you.
Anyway.
And so this is the reason I put this this paragraph in. So she goes on to say, Megan, whatever, former member of the Westboro Baptist Church, was taught to believe Rowling was going to hell over her support for gay rights.
Wait, can you play that back, please?
She was taught to believe Rowling was going to hell over her support for gay rights.
This author, the author of the article, Paula.
No, Megan, the co-host, the West Baptist Church
co-host,
co-host, believed take 4, JK Rowling was going to hell over her support for gay rights.
Because she wrote Dumbledore as gay.
As a predatory gay.
Yeah.
Just gotta bobble your head sometimes because you just can't contain your rage.
Okay.
So, whatever. Megan, I feel some ways. The podcast, based on 9 hours of interviews with Rowling, the first time Rowling has spoken at length about her advocacy, explores why she has been subjected to such wide-ranging vitriol, despite a body of work that embraces the virtues of being an outsider, the power of empathy towards one's enemies, and the primacy of loyalty towards one's friends. It's because she doesn't believe trans women are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting angry.
Also, you don't have to have empathy for your enemy when they are committing a genocide.
Yeah, when they're...
I said what I said.
You did say, and that's exactly what I want to say, so thank you. The podcast, which also includes interviews with critics of Rowling, delves into why Rowling has used her platform to challenge certain claims of so-called gender ideology, such as the idea that trans women should be treated as indistinguishably from biological women in virtually every legal and social context. Because they are women. Why both her fans and her fiercest critics have asked, would she bother to take such a stand knowing that attacks would ensue? So then this is Rowling, a quote from Rowling. The pushback is, how does she sound? The pushback is, she's British. No, I can't do the British. The pushback is often, you're wealthy, you can afford security, you haven't been silenced, all true. But I think that misses the point. The attempt to intimidate and silence me is meant to serve as a warning to other women with similar views who might also wish to speak out. And she goes on to say, and I say because I have seen it is that way. Rowling continues. She says other women have told her that they've been warned. Look what happened to JK Rowling. Watch yourself. Look what happens when you're transphobic. You get what's coming, man.
Yeah, hello?
No one deserves threats. I don't want to come across like that. I'm saying when people call you out for your transphobic statements and are holding you accountable,
own it. Here's the thing, right? Is like she has said all those things, but she doesn't actually want to take accountability for saying those things and stand behind those things because she's like, that's not what I meant. Babe, yes, it is. Because you're still saying them.
You're still defending yourself. Like it's
what? You can't have your cake and eat it too.
You can't. You can't have your castle and your moat too, except for she can, and she does.
And she does. And she still has her money. She still has her franchises. And she still has book deals.
That are coming out.
This podcast.
And she's got that video game. The whole thing. Okay, so then the other woman, Phelps Roper, she views speaking out as a responsibility and obligation. She's looking around and realizing that other people are self-censoring because they cannot afford to speak up. But she felt she had to be honest and stand up against a movement that she saw as using authoritarian tactics. Trans people? What is she talking about here?
I have nothing to say.
How is she being... And it's this, like... It's weaponizing feminism in the way it's like, women are being silenced. It's like... yes, and no one's saying women aren't being silenced, but also look at all this harm.
But also you're continuing to silence women.
And that's the thing. Like, it's so annoying and so, like... It's just like, you gotta just take a little step out of yourself. You gotta astral project. And you gotta see that you are the problem that you were trying to solve. You were part of the problem. Ugh. Breathe. Okay. Millions of Rowling's readers, no doubt, remain unaware. That's so true of her demonization. Everybody knows. Who doesn't know
I do think that's true. I do think that's true because the amount of people I've had like, no joke, the amount of people that I've had conversations with who specifically are people that don't engage with content online.
Fair.
Like, I had to have a genuine conversation with somebody about why I will not watch the Harry Potter movies. Yeah. I do not read the books anymore. I do not post anything. I took down I had like 3 posts where I used Harry Potter sounds on TikTok. I took them all down. Yep. Like, I do not share anything about Harry Potter online because I am so pissed off and like betrayed. Like, I feel betrayed by this woman.
It's a betrayal of trust,
and I'm a cis woman.
Yeah,
you know, like I there's just this level of betrayal that can never be brought back.
I agree.
Like, there's no coming back from it. And it amazes me every time I have to have the conversation with people when they're like, I don't get it. And I'm like, what's not to get, babe? What's not to get?
It's because people have never had to get something like that in their life, right? There are people who conform to a lot of what the dominant culture wants in normative things. There are people who've never had to question their gender or question their place in society or any of that like disruptiveness of like, I go against what is traditionally seen as correct, which I'm using air quotations in case you cannot see because that's poopy poop.
Right. And we
never had to confront that.
And we talked about this on the episode where we TLDR'd her manuscript, but there are a lot of people that haven't actually read it.
The manifesto?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is black and white.
It is.
It is right there. And I do urge listeners, if you haven't read her manifesto, the OG one from
on her website
a couple years ago, read it because everything's in there, and everything that came before and everything that has come after is boiled down in that manifesto.
And the richest part of it is that's her putting it out in her own words. It's like she's like, people are saying I said this. I'm like, you did. This is you saying this. It's just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling to me. I just have a little tiny bit left. So they're saying the readers maybe don't know, but that doesn't mean that, as with other outlandish claims, whether it's the big lie or QAnon, the accusations aren't insidious and tenacious. The seed has been planted in the culture that young people should feel like there's something wrong with liking Rowling's books and that her books are problematic and that appreciating her work is complicated.
It is.
Like it but, and it's not just Rowling. Like, there's so many authors that we have to come to terms with that they are human and sometimes they suck and they just suck, and you just have to know that. And you have to think, as a consumer who lives in very much a capitalistic society, my money speaks. My money directly speaks to my morals a lot of the time. You can't be a third party non-observer in this. Like, no, saying nothing says something.
Yeah. And this is one of those situations where, like, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. There's no ethical consumption under capitalism, right? However, I, as a consumer, can make pointed choices about where my money and my mouth goes.
Yes. Very much that.
And if your nostalgia, if your, like,
life-saving
towards a book outweighs human life and human rights, that is some unpacking you got to do.
That's something for you to be curious about, is what I'll say. And it's just like, it's this whole narrative that I find JK often weaponizes. It's like so many people are afraid to speak out, or like this is what people actually think. It's because so many people are that third party, non-commenting, I still want to enjoy it, but I don't want to be seen as someone who continues to enjoy it. So she's able to weaponize that silence as these people agree with me. Which you kind of are agreeing with her.
Which she does in the manifesto. That's a big part of the manifesto.
It is. And it's really troubling because that's what is now being used in legislation to say this is how things are being able to be passed in the UK that are scary for trans people.
Yeah.
Okay. In recent weeks, an uproar ensued over a new Harry Potter video game, which is Hogwarts Legacy, which so many people have been like going on and off about whether you should play it or not. It does have Harry Potter's first openly trans character in the video game, but also it is incredibly anti-Semitic because it is a war against the goblins.
Mm-hmm. If it is against the goblins, then yes, it is anti-Semitic.
Yes, like the Gringotts boys.
Yeah, the goblins.
Which we know are very problematic. If you don't know, do a simple Google search, you'll see why. But there's a lot of anti-Semitism baked into the video game, and people are like,
there's a whole lot of anti-Semitism baked into those books. So
in this economy, no. But you know, people are like, Rowling's not benefiting. Babe, Rowling is benefiting because it's keeping her name relevant. Like Deirdre sent me today, there's another book being published, another Harry Potter book. It's an almanac of all of the things, but I'm like,
it doesn't matter. They know that they can make money if Harry Potter's attached to it.
100%. Every Christmas, I see a new Harry Potter like companion guide, whatever coming out. It's usually at Costco.
There's like illustrated versions or something.
And like she's still making so much money, and she has literally said, look at the money I'm making. It shows you that people agree with me. She says that in her manifesto.
She says that in her manifesto.
Or if you don't want to go listen to our episode on it, you can hear us yell about JK Rowling in a different episode. Children will do well to read Harry Potter unreservedly and absorb its lessons. What lessons? What lessons, Paula? Defending those who have been scorned isn't easy. This is my least favorite part of the article, especially for young people. It's scary to stand up to bullies, as any Harry Potter reader knows. Let the grown-ups in the room lead the way. If more people stood up for JK Rowling, they would not only be doing right by her, they would be standing up for human rights, specifically women's rights, gay rights, and transgender rights. They'd also be standing up for the truth. So that's how the article ends.
I'm actually so mad I might cry.
Don't, you can cry. I'm just like let the grown-ups in the room lead the way is so dismissive. I don't think I've ever heard a more dismissive sentence.
So dismissive. And like, in what world
in 2023
defending JK Rowling a stance for trans rights when she has been the backbone of tearing them down?
Absolutely. And perpetuating so many harmful things, like both in the legal sense, but also culturally. Like, it's just, and my thing is like, honestly, for me, J.K. Rowling isn't really a supporter of women's rights because she's so exclusive of her women's rights that she's not supporting people. Like,
if you don't support trans women, you don't support women.
Anyway, that's for those of you who cannot see what just the podcast stopped recording. So I've had time to calm down, take a few deep breaths.
Yeah.
No one needs to defend JK Rowling. Yes, things that have happened to her, people sending death threats, people wanting harm for her is not okay.
Yeah.
But also is not, the thing she's saying is also not okay, so.
No.
IDK, man. IDK.
I know, two big topics, but two different things.
Two really different. This feels like an OG podcast for us where we just yell about things.
I know, just yelling at the top of our lungs. It was nice to get out of my system, though.
Yeah, I feel good.
I feel better. I'm gonna sleep well tonight.
Oh man, what you reading, dude?
What am I reading? So I started and am very close to finishing The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to expect going into it. I knew it was being published, and then I got reached out to receive an arc of it. And I believe it's out already. Yes, it came out at the end of February.
Awesome.
And Roshani wrote The Gilded Wolves, which is probably one of her best known series, and Star Touched Queen. I had no idea what was in store for me when I picked up this book, and I ended up also getting the audiobook at the same time. So I've been listening to the audiobook and reading the physical book, and the audiobook is phenomenal. The man, I very rarely give praise to male narrators, but Steve West gets a thumbs up from me. I would read other audiobooks he narrates.
Kind of slay.
It's been exciting listening to him. There is, I want to start off by saying there's no sexual content on the page, but the book feels erotic. Like there is this inherent, like, visceral like relationship and feeling between the main character and his wife Indigo, and like their relationship is so cool in a like dark and twisted way. But the book ends up like there is no on-page stuff happening. There's like one later mention, but it's still, I'm like, while I'm reading it, just because of the like scenarios that are happening. So we meet the main character, who is called the bridegroom, and to be quite honest, I'm not sure that we are actually told his name. And he's a scholar. He is in Paris, and he wants to meet this person who is the what's the word? They own this artifact that he wants to look at, and he's been trying to look at for years. And he thinks it's a man, but at their meeting figures out that it's a woman, and her name is Indigo. And she was an heiress to this massive fortune. Her parents died when she was really little. She was taken under the care of her aunt. And through her relationship with her husband, they start to exchange like gifts and stories and like create this life together. But then one day her aunt sends word that she is about to die, and Indigo needs to come back to the family home. And so the two of them travel there, and Indigo made her husband promise him that he would never go looking for her secrets. And it's like all tied to like Greek myths, specifically Psyche and Eros, how Eros told Psyche that she could never look upon him, and then she did, and then she had to go through all the trials to get him back. And so in that vein, he could never look for her secrets. But they get to this house, and he finds out that there is so much more to her past that she has never told him about. And there's this inherent like fantasy element to all of this. The bridegroom talks about how he believes he had a brother when he was little, and that he was taken to the land of the Fae. But his mom one day was like, you've never had a brother. I don't know what you're talking about. But like in his memory, he has this brother. And then some of the things were shown from Indigo's childhood. She was like really seeking to transform into somebody that fairies would take and transform.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like all of these things with the house that go on. And so it's this really interesting, like, is this magic real? Is this magic made up? Is it like the inherent magic that lies within our world that people can what's the word I'm looking for? Enhance through their imagination and their lust for a magical life? Or is there magic in this book? Like, it's so cool and it's so dark and like so like there are things that are happening at the end of this book that I'm like, oh, like walking around listening to the audiobook with my jaw on the ground because I just can't believe what I heard.
Whoa.
It is, and it's a quick read. I actually really want to get like because this is an advanced copy, I really want to get like a hardcover version of it. It has been such a wild ride and I can't wait to finish it.
Ooh, sounds fun.
It is fun.
Sounds
but
fun.
It's super dark.
Very interesting though. Very interesting. I'm going to talk about 2 books really fast. The first one being Radiant Sin by Katie Robert, which is her most recent booky book that came out. I think it is already out. I think it came out early February. This might be my favorite Dark Olympus book now, which feels, but it was so good.
Big words.
It follows Cassandra and Apollo, and Cassandra is basically like this disgraced daughter who everyone doesn't like because her parents tried to enact this clause of the 13 where if you kill one of the 13, you get to become that person. So it's a secret thing that nobody knows about. So people, they tried to do the thing and then they got for it. So Cassandra works for Apollo. She's like his executive assistant kind of thing. And there's a guy named Minos who we met in Wicked Beauty. His adopted foster sons, Theseus and the Minotaur, it's Theseus, Minotaur, oh god, how do you say her name? Arida. Yeah. I'm just gonna spell it. And Pandora are all kind of his kiddos, but he has kind of snuck his way into Olympus, and people are like, what are you doing here, sir? And people, so basically he invites this group of people over to his house for a week-long party, and there's members of the 13 who are invited. There's members like plus ones who are invited. So Apollo and Zeus propose that Apollo brings Cassandra as his plus one because she's really good at reading people and like doesn't conform to the whatever the 13. But then people start getting hurt and disappearing, and something's afoot. It's really good. And like, so I forgot to say, and Apollo makes Cassandra fake date him, so it's a fake dating forced proximity thing.
It's my favorite. It's
really good. And like Cassandra's a plus size heroine. She's great. And it's like Apollo's like golden retriever. Like it is like both of them are like unrequiting pining. They both love each other so much, but they're so afraid to tell each other. So it's just very sweet. Like it's just a sweet little romance, and it's a slow burn for Katie. It's her first slow burn, which is funny because they do engage in things about halfway through the book, which isn't really a slow burn by anyone else's standard, but for Katie it is. But it's really good. I really enjoyed it. I read it in about 3 days, which is fast for me recently because I've been a slow boy recently by my own standards, but it was really good. And then the second book I want to talk about was actually a book it's an audiobook that I'm listening to. It's from Libo FM. It's called Period. The real story of menstruation. It is so interesting. It's one of their ALC picks, so I highly recommend Jojo, I highly recommend you go download it. It is so good. Basically, it's this woman, she's an anthropologist. Her name is Kate Clancy. And anthropology is like the study of humankind and the evolution of human. And she just talks about these misconceptions of menstruation and like these things, like she talks about specifically in the book because it comes out this month. She talks about Roe versus Wade and menstruation, which I think is interesting. She talks about the COVID-19 vaccine and menstruation, which I think is interesting. She talks about misconceptions around that. And she talks about like I was talking to my mom about this morning. I was like, Mom, have you heard of metatoxins before? And she's like, what is that? Have you heard of metatoxins? Mm-mm. So it was this thing that men made up in the medical field that women secrete during their menstrual cycles, this poison, this toxin. And it came from this man who said that he wanted his assistant to put flowers in a vase. He's a doctor. And the woman refused. And maybe she just didn't want to. But the woman refused. And he was like, why? And she said, I'm menstruating. I don't want the flowers to wilt. Because when I'm menstruating, flowers die. And he was like, interesting. Let's do a scientific study. Where he has women who are menstruating and not handling bouquets of flowers to see if they die or not. And then he says that like 100% prove that women give off toxins when they are menstruating. And this is obviously happening years ago, but it is so interesting. It's so interesting to see like gynecology being a science that was made by men, like for men, about women's bodies. Very interesting. Talking about birth control or contraception, how different demographics of women are more likely to get permanent things, where white women are more likely to be offered things that are temporary that they can come off of, because white women's fertility is seen as the ideal. It's so feminist. It talks about race, it talks about sexism, it talks about eugenics, so much about eugenics, and how it's so, and it's only 8 hours. So it's a quick little jaunt, but it is. I want to talk to people about it. I'm like,
I actually think I downloaded it. I'm 99% sure.
It sounds real. Like, I cannot recommend it enough. And I love, like, the author talks about, and this is something I talked to my mom about. I was like, Mom, this is great. She talks about people in the book are like bodies that can menstruate, is how she refers to that demographic of people. Because often, like, menstruating bodies, what about the women who are postmenopausal? What about people who aren't women who have uteruses, or intersex people? Like, there's so many other people under this umbrella. So I feel like it's a very inclusive look at menstruation, which I also really appreciate. So if you're looking for a little nonfiction in your life, I highly recommend Period by Kate Clancy.
Oh, okay. Lots of good reads happening around here to make up for all our anger.
My anger, if that beginning of the podcast is not, you'll never hear from us. This episode will never happen.
I know.
Never hear from us
again.
We
hope you enjoyed this episode and this installment of book news from all things happening in February. Please make sure you hit us up on Instagram, or in our email, or in our voicemail, or in our YouTube comments, and let us know what you thought of this episode. And if you have any thoughts on any of the things that we chatted about, please be sure to follow us on our Instagram. Like I said, it is at Books on the Brain Pod. You will get the latest updates from us on there. You can also follow us on our own social platforms. I'm at Deirdre Rose Morgan on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube.
I'm at DJ Books on TikTok, Instagram, and on Pinterest. Follow me there.
You know what I forgot to start at the beginning of this season?
What?
We haven't been asking people to post emojis.
That was probably so loud. I'm so sorry. Okay, what emoji? I forgot.
I know. What emoji is this this episode? The demon face.
Yeah.
The purple angry one.
Yeah. Or the guy who's melting.
Or the guy who's melting. Yeah, both of those. Please pop those in the comment section of our latest Instagram post. And you can even post those on our Instagram comments, on our YouTube comment section. Oh my goodness, there's so many things. Please make sure you are following us on YouTube. You can watch the show there, and you can subscribe and set up notifications. And it would mean so much if you would also rate, review, and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. That is it. We will chat to you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.